she'll never check the storage unit. That's what my stepson Derek said to his girlfriend on speakerphone while I stood in my own kitchen, hidden just around the corner. My blood ran cold as I listened to him actually laugh about selling my late husband's prized antique collection, the collection Robert spent 40 years building, the collection that was supposed to stay in our family forever. But here's what Derek didn't know. I checked that storage unit every single week, and 3 months earlier, after noticing some items had been slightly moved, I'd installed a GPS tracker inside Robert's most valuable piece, a 1780s Philadelphia Chippendale chest-on-chest worth over $60,000. When Derek tried to sell it at that auction house in Manhattan, well, let's just say karma came with a court order. My name is Claire Morrison, and I'm 68 years old. I'm calling to you from Asheville, North Carolina, where the mountains are beautiful, but family betrayal can be uglier than anything nature could throw at you. Before we go any further, I'd love to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your city and state in the comments. It helps me know I'm not alone in this world, and honestly, after what I've been through, that connection means everything. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare really started. Robert and I were married for 12 wonderful years before pancreatic cancer took him from me 2 years ago. He was 71, vibrant until the very end, and the love of my second chapter. My first husband passed when I was 45, leaving me with 2 grown daughters who are the lights of my life. When I met Robert at a charity auction, ironic I know, I never expected to find love again. Robert was a retired architect with a passion that bordered on obsession, American antique furniture. Not just any pieces, mind you. He specialized in 18th century Philadelphia craftsmanship. Every weekend we'd drive to estate sales, auctions, and antique shows. I'd watch his eyes light up when he'd spot a genuine piece among the reproductions. He taught me everything: how to identify authentic joinery, the difference between period hardware and replacements, the way certain woods aged in specific patterns. His collection became our shared joy: 23 museum-quality pieces, each with documented provenance. The Chippendale chest-on-chest was his crown jewel, but there were also Queen Anne chairs, a stunning tall case clock, several tavern tables, and a Philadelphia highboy that made collectors weep with envy. Derek was Robert's son from his first marriage. 42 years old, twice divorced, and always looking for the easy way out. Robert loved him. Of course he did. But he wasn't blind to his son's flaws. Derek had burned through 3 business opportunities that Robert had funded. He'd borrowed money that was never repaid. He had a way of showing up right when he needed something, then disappearing once he got it. When Robert's diagnosis came, he made his wishes crystal clear. He updated his will with his attorney, made me executor, and specified exactly what would happen to his antique collection. "These pieces stay together, Claire," he told me, holding my hand in that hospital bed. "They tell a story. Promise me you'll protect them." I promised. I had no idea how much that promise would cost me. The funeral was a blur of casseroles and condolences, but I remember Derek's behavior with painful clarity. While my daughters Rebecca and Amanda helped me greet guests and manage the service details, Derek spent most of the reception on his phone in the corner. He left early, barely said goodbye. The will reading happened 2 weeks later. Robert's attorney, Frank Holloway, had been his friend for 30 years. Frank handled it with sensitivity, but the tension in that conference room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Robert had been generous to Derek. He left him $50,000 cash, his vintage Mercedes, and several valuable items from the house. But the antique collection, that went to me, with a provision that upon my death, it would be divided equally among my 2 daughters and Derek. The stipulation was clear. The collection was to remain intact during my lifetime, not to be sold or dispersed. Derek's face went purple. "That's it? After everything He caught himself. but not before we all saw the rage. "Your father wanted Claire to have security," Frank said calmly. "The collection is valued at approximately $400,000. It ensures she's taken care of." "She's already taken care of," Derek spat. "She got the house, the life insurance, the retirement accounts." "Which your father and I built together over 12 years of marriage," I said quietly. I wasn't going to let him rewrite history. Everything was done fairly and legally. Derek stormed out. "That was 2 years ago. I didn't hear from him for 6 months after that. The collection was too valuable to keep in the house, especially the larger pieces." Robert had always rented a climate-controlled storage unit at Secure Space Storage, about 15 minutes from our home. It was a top-tier facility, alarmed, camera-monitored, individual unit climate control. The unit was large enough to properly store everything with room to move around. After Robert passed, I transferred the rental agreement to my name and continued the monthly payments. I visited every week, usually on Thursday afternoons. I'd unlock that unit, step inside, and spend an hour among Robert's treasures. Sometimes I'd just sit in the Windsor chair and talk to him. Other times, I'd carefully dust pieces and check for any signs of humidity damage or pest activity. I know it might sound strange, but those visits kept me connected to him. Each piece held memories. The tavern table we'd found in Vermont during a snowstorm, the cellar not. Realizing what he had. The Queen Anne chairs we'd successfully bid on at a heated auction in Charleston. The highboy that Robert authenticated himself, proving it was Philadelphia-made when 2 dealers had insisted it was English. During those first months after Robert's death, I'll admit, I wasn't always as vigilant about checking every single piece. I was grieving. Sometimes I'd sit there with tears streaming down my face, barely seeing what was in front of me. That's probably when Derek started noticing the unit wasn't as carefully monitored as it should have been. That's probably when he started planning. It was 9 months after Robert's death when Derek suddenly reappeared in my life, all smiles and apologies. I should have known something was wrong right then. "Claire, I've been doing a lot of thinking," Derek said when he showed up at my door on a Tuesday evening unannounced. "I was wrong. I let grief and money cloud my judgment. Dad would have been disappointed in how I acted." I stood there, stunned. This was not the Derek I knew. The Derek I knew didn't apologize. He justified. "I want to make things right," he continued, and I swear there were tears in his eyes. "You were good to Dad. You made him happy in his final years. I should have thanked you instead of acting like a spoiled child." Against my better judgment, because I'm not made of stone, I invited him in. We had coffee. He asked about my daughters, told me about his new job in sales, claimed he was finally getting his life together. He seemed different, humbler. "I was wondering," he said carefully, "if maybe I could see Dad's collection sometime. I know it's yours, I respect that. I have memories attached to some of those pieces too. Him taking me to auctions when I was a kid. I'd like to feel close to him again." How could I say no to that? Despite everything, he was Robert's son, and if Robert could see past Derek's flaws, surely I could make an effort. "Of course," I said. "I go every Thursday afternoon. You're welcome to join me this week." His face lit up. "That would mean a lot, Claire. Really." That Thursday, we met at the storage facility. I punched in my access code and we walked to Unit 247. When I opened the door and turned on the lights, Derek stepped inside with what looked like genuine reverence. "God, I forgot how incredible these pieces are," he murmured, running his hand along the Chippendale chest. "This one was always Dad's favorite, wasn't it?" "His masterpiece," I agreed. "He searched for one of this quality for 20 years. We spent an hour there. Derek asked questions, shared memories I'd never heard before, about going to estate sales with Robert as a teenager, learning to spot quality craftsmanship. For a moment, I let myself believe that grief had changed him, that loss had taught him what truly mattered. I was such a fool. Derek started visiting regularly. Every 2 or 3 weeks, he'd ask if he could come to the storage unit with me. I was actually touched. It felt like healing, like family rebuilding itself after tragedy. Then, about 3 months into this new relationship, I arrived for my usual Thursday visit and immediately felt something was off. Nothing was missing. I checked carefully. But the Chippendale chest had been moved slightly. The tavern table was at a different angle. Small changes that most people wouldn't notice. But I'd been studying these pieces for 12 years. I told myself I was being paranoid. Derek had been here with me just days before. Maybe we'd moved things and I'd forgotten. Grief brain, right? That's what my daughter Amanda called it when I'd forget appointments or lose my keys. But something nagged at me. Something felt wrong. I didn't confront Derek about the moved items. Instead, I did something I'm not entirely proud of, but desperate times and all that. I installed a hidden camera in the storage unit, just a small one, tucked behind some boxes in the corner with motion activation and live feed to my phone. Secure Space had cameras in the hallways, but not inside individual units. This was my insurance. I also changed my visit schedule without telling anyone. Instead of Thursday afternoons, I started coming on random days and times. Tuesday morning, Saturday evening, Wednesday at lunch. I wanted to see if anything else would change. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. My camera only caught me coming and going. I started to feel foolish. Maybe I really was being paranoid. Maybe grief was making me suspicious of someone who was genuinely trying to do better. Then, on a Friday afternoon when I was supposed to be at my book club, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the camera. I was sitting in Martha Brennan's living room discussing The Nightingale when I glanced at my phone and saw Derek inside my storage unit, alone, with another man I didn't recognize. My heart stopped. I made an excuse about feeling unwell and practically ran to my car. The storage facility was 20 minutes away. I pulled up the live feed on my phone while I drove. Probably not safe, but I wasn't thinking about safety right then. I watched as Derek and this stranger examined pieces, took photos, even measured the Chippendale chest. The stranger was writing things down in a notebook. They were clearly appraising everything, and just as clearly, they thought they were doing it in secret. "This one's the gold mine," I heard Derek say, his voice crackling through my phone's speaker. "Conservative estimate is 60 grand, but the right buyer might go higher." "Your stepmom won't notice it missing?" the stranger asked. Derek laughed. That's when he said it. That's when I heard the words that would replay in my nightmares. "She'll never check the storage unit. She's gotten lazy about it. Old grief, you know. She comes maybe once a month now, barely looks around. By the time she notices anything, they'll be long sold and I'll be long gone." I had to pull over. My hands were shaking too hard to drive. I sat in a Walgreens parking lot watching these 2 men on my phone screen as they documented every valuable piece my husband had spent a lifetime collecting, as they planned to steal not just objects, but Robert's legacy, my security, the physical embodiment of a love story. "How are you getting access?" the stranger asked. Derek held up a key. "Had a copy made months ago. She's too trusting. This is the easiest money I'll ever make." The stranger, who I later learned was Marcus Walsh, a disreputable dealer known for moving questionable merchandise, nodded approvingly. "I can move most of these within a week through private sales. The Chippendale will need to go through auction to get top dollar, but I have contacts. We'll need to wait a few months, let things cool down, then we move everything at once," Derek finished. "She reports it stolen, cops investigate, but by then the pieces are scattered across the country with new provenance paperwork. Untraceable." I sat in that parking lot, watching and recording everything on my phone, and felt something shift inside me. The grief that had made me soft, that had made me want to believe in Derek's redemption story, it crystallized into something harder, clearer. Robert had warned me. "Derek will always choose the easy money," he'd said once sadly. "I love my son, but I'm not blind to what he is." I thought maybe Robert was being too harsh. I'd wanted to believe people could change. Now I knew better. I waited until they left, gave them 10 minutes, then drove to the storage unit myself. Everything was exactly as they'd left it. They'd been careful not to leave obvious signs. But now I knew. Now I understood that Derek's entire reconciliation had been a con from the start. He'd played on my grief, my loneliness, my desire to honor Robert's memory by including his son. That night, I called my daughter Rebecca. She's a paralegal in Charleston, sharp as they come. I told her everything, showed her the video footage. "Mom, you need to report this to the police," she said immediately. "Report what? That he looked at the furniture? That he had a conversation? Nothing's been stolen yet. They'll say it's a family dispute over inheritance, tell me to hire a civil attorney, and nothing will happen." "So what are you going to do?" That's when the idea came to me. I'm going to let them think they're getting away with it, and I'm going to make sure that when they try to sell the collection, they get caught red-handed with irrefutable proof. "Mom, I need you to help me research GPS trackers," I said. "Tiny ones, the kind they use to track stolen art." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "This is risky. So is letting Derek steal $400,000 of your stepfather's legacy and my financial security. That's what people don't understand about women my age. They think we're soft, forgiving, that we'll just let things slide to keep the peace. But we've lived long enough to know that sometimes peace costs too much. Sometimes you have to fight." I spent the next week researching. There are GPS trackers designed specifically for high-value artwork and antiques, tiny devices that can be hidden inside furniture, with battery life measured in months, not days. They transmit location data in real time to your phone. They're not cheap. The good ones run about $500 each, but this was worth it. I ordered 3. One for the Chippendale chest and 2 backups for other high-value pieces, in case Derek got smart and separated the collection. When they arrived, I watched YouTube videos on how to install them properly. For the Chippendale chest, I found a perfect spot. A small cavity behind one of the drawers where the tracker fit perfectly, completely invisible unless you knew exactly where to look and remove the drawer entirely. If you're enjoying this story and want to hear more like it, please hit that subscribe button. Trust me, what happens next is worth staying for. I installed the trackers on a Tuesday morning, working carefully and methodically. My hands didn't shake once. I was past fear now. I was in execution mode. Each device was activated and tested, showing perfect signal transmission to my phone. I could see exactly where my pieces were at any moment, down to the building address. For the next month, I played the perfect oblivious widow. When Derek called to check on me, I was warm and grateful. When he asked to visit the storage unit again, just to feel close to Dad, I agreed readily. I watched him on my hidden camera, watched him measuring pieces again, taking more photos, clearly preparing for the theft. "Soon," I heard him tell Marcus Walsh during one visit, "she's going to her daughter's place in Charleston for Thanksgiving week. That's when we move everything." Charleston. Rebecca's house. That was 7 weeks away. Plenty of time for them to plan, to get sloppy, to feel confident. I started preparing my own plan. I contacted Frank Holloway, Robert's attorney, and explained everything. I showed him the videos, the recordings, the GPS tracker information. "Claire, this is beyond my expertise," he said, but I could see the anger in his eyes. Frank had loved Robert like a brother. "You need to talk to Stan Mitchell. He's a criminal defense attorney, but he'll know how to handle this properly. And document everything. I mean everything." Stan Mitchell turned out to be a godsend. Mid-60s, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for taking down white-collar criminals. When I walked into his office and laid out the whole story, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. "Mrs. Morrison, has anyone ever told you that you'd make an excellent detective?" "I just want my husband's collection protected," I said. "And I want Derek to face real consequences, not just a slap on the wrist." "Here's what we're going to do," Stan said. "We're going to let them steal the collection. Let them think they've won. Then we're going to track every single piece, document every sale, and build a case for grand larceny, fraud, and trafficking in stolen goods. By the time we're done, Derek and his associate won't just lose the collection, they'll lose their freedom." "That's risky," I said. "What if we lose track of the pieces?" "That's why those GPS trackers are genius. But we're also going to work with the police, get them involved from the start, so this is done by the book. I have contacts in the art theft division. They handle cases like this all the time." Over the next 3 weeks, we built an airtight strategy. The police were briefed and ready to track the stolen items. We contacted the major auction houses on the East Coast, Sotheby's, Christie's, Freeman's, Pook & Pook, and gave them photographs and documentation of every piece in the collection. If Derek or Marcus tried to consign anything, these auction houses would flag it immediately. I also did something else. I hired a private investigator named Teresa Chen. She had 20 years of experience in corporate fraud investigations. Her job was to track Marcus Walsh's movements, document his other sales, and help build a pattern of criminal behavior. "This guy's dirty," Teresa reported after 1 week. "Multiple aliases, history of moving questionable merchandise. The DA's office will love this." Thanksgiving week arrived. I made a big show of packing for Charleston, posting on Facebook about how excited I was to spend the holiday with Rebecca and her family. I told Derek I'd be gone for 5 days. I made sure he knew I'd left town. In reality, I drove to Charleston, dropped off my luggage at Rebecca's, then drove right back to Asheville the same night. I checked into a hotel under my daughter Amanda's name, paying cash. For the next 5 days, I was a ghost in my own town. The theft happened on Tuesday night, just after midnight. My phone lit up with GPS alerts as all 3 trackers started moving simultaneously. I watched the dots on my screen converge at an address in an industrial area on the outskirts of town. Marcus Walsh's warehouse, according to Teresa's earlier surveillance. Stan Mitchell had already alerted the police. Detective Sarah Brennan, no relation to my book club friend Martha, was leading the investigation. She called me at 1 a.m. "Mrs. Morrison, we have visual confirmation. 2 men, one matching Derek Morrison's description, loading furniture into a large rental truck. We're documenting everything but won't intercept yet. We want to catch them in the act of selling." "Thank you, Detective." "Ma'am, I want you to know what your stepson is doing is despicable. We're going to make sure justice is served." For 3 days, I watched those GPS dots move. First to Marcus Walsh's warehouse. Then, one by one, pieces started dispersing. 2 Queen Anne chairs went to a private buyer in Atlanta. Police tracked that sale, got the buyer's information, and confirmed they'd been told the chairs came from an estate sale. Legal provenance documents, all forged. The tavern table went to an antique mall in Knoxville. The tall case clock sold to a collector in Richmond. Every single sale was documented. Every buyer was contacted and informed the pieces were stolen. Most were cooperative. They'd been duped too. But the Chippendale chest? That didn't move. According to Teresa's intelligence, Marcus was waiting to consign it to a major auction house. That's where the real money was. "They're being patient," Stan explained during one of our daily check-ins. "They know moving the high-value piece too quickly raises red flags. They'll wait 60, maybe 90 days, then list it with forged provenance. But we'll be waiting." I returned from my trip to Charleston, called Derek to let him know I was home, and waited for the performance. It came exactly 2 days later. Derek called me, voice full of false concern. "Claire, I drove by the storage facility today and something seemed off. When's the last time you checked on Dad's collection?" "Oh, I haven't been since before Thanksgiving." "Why?" Claire, I think you should go check. I have a bad feeling." The acting was almost impressive. I drove to Secure Space with Derek on the phone, letting him listen as I discovered the empty unit. My screams were real enough, even though I was screaming in rage, not grief. The facility manager called the police. Reports were filed. Insurance was contacted, and Derek played the supportive stepson perfectly, holding my hand while I gave my statement, offering to help however he could. "We'll find who did this, Claire," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "I promise." For 2 months, Derek maintained his performance. He checked on me regularly, brought me groceries, even helped me file the insurance claim. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have actually believed he cared. Meanwhile, the GPS tracker in the Chippendale chest sat silent in Marcus Walsh's warehouse, waiting. Detective Brennan assured me weekly that they were building an airtight case. Every dispersed piece had been traced. Every buyer had given statements. They had Marcus Walsh under surveillance 24/7. "We need the big fish," Detective Brennan told me. "The moment he tries to auction that Chippendale chest, we've got them both on conspiracy to commit grand larceny, fraud, and trafficking in stolen property. The DA wants this case." In late January, almost 3 months after the theft, Teresa Chen called me with news. Marcus just contacted Freeman's auction house in Philadelphia. He's consigning the Chippendale chest for their March Americana sale. He's using documentation that claims it came from a New Jersey estate, belonged to his late uncle. All forged, of course, but very professionally done. And Freeman's. We alerted them weeks ago, remember. They've been instructed to play along, accept the consignment, but notify authorities immediately. The auction is scheduled for March 15th. That's when we move. The next 6 weeks were excruciating. I had to maintain my grieving widow act while knowing exactly where my husband's masterpiece was. I had to accept Derek's sympathy while knowing he was counting stolen money. I had to pretend to have hope that the police would, maybe someday, recover the collection. March 15th finally arrived. The auction was at 2 p.m. I drove to Philadelphia with Rebecca, who'd taken the day off work. Stan Mitchell met us outside Freeman's auction house on Chestnut Street. Detective Brennan and her partner were there in plain clothes. Marcus Walsh was already inside, registering and preparing for the sale. "Where's Derek?" I asked Stan. "In the auction room, front row. He wants to watch his big payday." The auction house was elegant. High ceilings, well-dressed collectors, the quiet murmur of money about to change hands. Rebecca and I sat in the back, both wearing scarves and sunglasses like we were in some kind of heist movie. Derek was indeed in the front row, practically vibrating with anticipation. The auctioneer worked through the first 20 lots, various furniture pieces, oil paintings, decorative arts. Then Lot 47 came up. Philadelphia Chippendale chest on chest, circa 1780, provenance from the estate of Harold Walsh, New Jersey. My Roberts masterpiece appeared on the screen in all its glory. The crowd murmured appreciatively. This was a museum-quality piece, and everyone in that room knew it. "We'll start the bidding at $30,000, the auctioneer said. Hands went up immediately. $40,000, $50,000. The price climbed steadily. Derek was smiling. I could see it from the back. At $70,000, only 2 bidders remained. That's when Detective Brennan stood up and walked to the front of the room. She held up her badge. "Ladies and gentlemen, I need everyone to remain calm. This auction is hereby suspended. The item currently being bid on is stolen property, and we have a warrant for the arrest of Marcus Walsh and Derek Morrison." The room erupted. Derek's head whipped around so fast I thought he'd hurt himself. His eyes found mine in the back row, and the look on his face, shock, betrayal, rage, was something I'll never forget. Marcus Walsh tried to run. Emphasis on tried. Detective Brennan's partner caught him before he made it 5 feet. They had him on the ground in handcuffs within seconds. Derek stood frozen in place, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just here for the auction. I'm a guest." "Mr. Morrison," Detective Brennan said calmly, walking toward him. "With handcuffs ready, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." "Claire!" Derek shouted as they cuffed him, finally spotting me in the back. "Claire, what is this? What's happening?" I stood up, pulled off my sunglasses, and walked down the aisle. Every eye in that auction house was on me. I'd waited 2 months for this moment. What's happening, Derek, is that I check the storage unit every single week. My voice was steady, cold. I also installed a GPS tracker in that chest 3 months ago. We've tracked every piece you stole, every sales you made, every lie you told. His face went white. But you didn't. I watched. You watched what you wanted to see, a grieving widow, too distracted to notice her stepson was a thief. But your father taught me something important, Derek. He taught me that authenticity matters, that you always verify provenance, that you never take anything at face value. Derek Morrison, Detective Brennan said formally, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit grand larceny, fraud, trafficking in stolen goods, and a dozen other charges we've been building for the past 3 months. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As they led him away, Derek was shouting about lawyers, about family, about how I'd tricked him. The auction house guests were buzzing with shock and excitement. They'd just witnessed something far more dramatic than any furniture sale. Freeman's director, a distinguished woman named Patricia Cunningham, approached me with obvious relief. Mrs. Morrison, we've been holding this piece in trust, waiting for this moment. I cannot tell you how grateful we are that justice is being served. Stolen goods have no place in the legitimate auction market. Stan Mitchell appeared at my elbow. The DA has everything he needs. With the GPS tracking data, the video footage from your storage unit camera, the testimony from all the buyers who purchased the dispersed pieces, and Marcus Walsh's history, they're both looking at 5 to 10 years minimum. Teresa Chen had been in the auction room too, documenting everything. She gave me a thumbs up from across the room. Every piece of the plan had worked perfectly. The other pieces of the collection that had been sold were being recovered by police in various cities. The buyers had all cooperated once they learned the pieces were stolen. No one in the legitimate antique world wants to be associated with theft. Within a week, every single item was back in my possession. The trial happened 7 months later. Derek pleaded guilty to avoid a longer sentence, but even with a plea deal, he got 6 years in federal prison. Marcus Walsh got 8. Both were ordered to pay restitution. Not that I expected to see much of that money. The courtroom was packed for the sentencing. My daughters sat on either side of me. Derek's mother, Roberts. First wife showed up but didn't speak to me. I understood. Her son had committed serious crimes, but he was still her son. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement, I kept it brief. Your Honor, my late husband spent 40 years building that collection. Every piece represented not just financial value, but history, craftsmanship, and love. Derek didn't just try to steal objects. He tried to steal a legacy. He weaponized my grief and used it against me. But he forgot something important. Grief doesn't make you weak. Sometimes it makes you stronger than you've ever been. Derek couldn't look at me. Good. The collection returned to the climate-controlled storage unit, but I upgraded security significantly. New locks, additional cameras, and a security company that does random checks. I also created a detailed catalog with every piece photographed and documented, filed with the county clerk's office and my attorney. If anyone ever tries this again, they'll fail even faster. I still visit every week. Thursday afternoons, just like always. I sit in that Windsor chair and talk to Robert, telling him about the grandchildren, about my book club, about the small moments that make up a life. I kept my promise, I tell him. The collection is safe. Your legacy is protected. Rebecca and Amanda have both expressed interest in learning more about the pieces. Amanda's daughter, my granddaughter Sophie, is particularly fascinated by the Chippendale chest. She's 15 and already has an eye for quality craftsmanship. Maybe the collection will mean as much to her generation as it did to Robert's. As for Derek, I hear things occasionally. He's in a minimum security facility in Virginia. His mother visits him monthly. Part of me, The part that remembers how Robert loved his son despite everything, feels a sliver of sadness about how things ended. But mostly, I feel relief and vindication. Robert once told me, "The truth is in the details, Claire. The authentic versus the reproduction, the genuine versus the fake. It all comes down to looking carefully at the details." He was talking about furniture, but the lesson applies to people too. I'm 68 years old. I've been widowed twice. I've raised children, buried parents, survived loss that would have broken a younger version of myself. I've learned that sometimes kindness is returned with cruelty, that family isn't always who you're related to, and that trust must be earned, not assumed. But I've also learned that women like me, women who've lived long enough to know better, but still choose to stand up and fight, we're stronger than anyone gives us credit for. The GPS tracker is still in that Chippendale chest, by the way. Insurance, Robert would call it, just in case.